Friday, Donald Trump posted, "I absolutely love that Colbert got fired. His talent was even less than his ratings." But here's the thing, would an untalented man really be able to come up with sharp, satirical lines like that? I'm going to go ahead and say it. Cancel culture has gone too far this time. It's sunk in that they're killing off our show. But they made one mistake. They left me alive. And now, for the next 10 minutes, the gloves are entirely off. The architecture of a meltdown started out like any regular late-night segment. Colbert was polished up in his suit, looking calm and collected. Meanwhile, Trump was somewhere firing off angry posts like the internet owed him a personal apology. But then the mood shifted fast. The jokes got sharper. The smile on Colbert's face got a little colder, and suddenly Stephen Colbert stopped playing nice. This wasn't some soft little monologue with safe punchlines and polite chuckles from the audience. No, this turned into a full-on comedy takedown, the kind of 10-minute verbal beatdown that probably made Trump's hairspray start questioning its entire life choices. No cue cards could have saved him here. No damage control team could have softened the blow. Colbert walked in serving hot truth wrapped in layers of sarcasm, dipped in glittering disrespect, and delivered it like a man who knew exactly where every single nerve was hidden. Trump wanted a fight over words, but he showed up swinging like it was a campaign rally, while Colbert came prepared for a full Shakespearean roast battle. And honestly, by the end of it, the real question wasn't whether Trump could respond effectively. The real question was whether anyone still cared enough to listen to what he had to say. No one even cares about the guy anymore. I don't understand why they would be so interested in him. He's been dead for a long time in terms of cultural relevance. He was never a big factor in anything substantial to begin with. But Trump simply couldn't let it go. The obsession runs too deep. The need for validation is this endless gaping void that no amount of social media praise can ever truly fill, no matter how hard he tries. There is something almost beautiful about watching a man who spends his life bragging about being rich get absolutely cooked by a guy who earns his paycheck by telling jokes to Americans who are just trying to fall asleep at night. And when that guy is Stephen Colbert, you already know Trump's ego is about to take a fall so hard it needs its own warning label. Because there are few things more satisfying than seeing a late-night host calmly place a former president's overinflated pride on a silver tray and roast it right in front of the entire country. It felt like poetic justice wearing a nice tie. Trump came in thinking he was going to be the headline, but Colbert turned him into the punchline before the audience even had time to settle into their seats. The dangerous game of distraction played out on Saturday. Trump surprised the world by announcing that the U.S. had launched strikes on 3 Iranian nuclear facilities. Now, were we facing an imminent threat? I don't know. On one hand, Iran's slogan isn't exactly "life to America," but it's hard to trust Donald Trump to be the one making these kinds of high-stakes decisions. It kind of feels like we're all in the back seat while the Uber driver goes on a full road rage episode. Think about the sheer scale of the absurdity here. A major geopolitical crisis unfolding on one screen while a petty media feud rages on the other. It's a classic strategy, isn't it? When the heat in the real world gets too intense, you find an enemy, create a distraction, strike a match, and watch the media scramble to cover the flames instead. But Donald tried to start something with Colbert, which is already a terrible idea from the start. That is like a raccoon challenging a flamethrower and expecting the flamethrower to blink first. Colbert stood there with that familiar little grin, the one that says, "I read books, I understand complete sentences, and I know exactly how to use both against you." Then he fired back, not with random yelling or cheap noise, but with a comedy haymaker so spicy it could have been served with a side of antacid at Mar-a-Lago's all-you-can-believe delusion buffet. Trump thought he was throwing a jab. Colbert turned the whole exchange into a public lesson in why you never pick a fight with someone who gets paid to make arrogant people look ridiculous. Ladies and gentlemen, my mustache comes to you with a heavy heart because while I was on vacation, my parent corporation Paramount paid Donald Trump a $16 million settlement over his 60 Minutes lawsuit. As someone who has always been a proud employee of this network, I'm offended and I don't know if anything will ever repair my Trump. Let that number sink in for a second. $16 million paid out not because of some grand legal victory, but because a massive media conglomerate decided it was cheaper to pay the toll than to keep listening to the endless droning noise of a billionaire's legal tantrums. It wasn't vindication, it was hush money for the years of complaints. A corporate bribe to buy a few moments of peace and quiet from the non-stop sirens of grievance. The illusion of victory for a man whose version of deep thinking often sounds like shouting fake news at kitchen appliances somehow failed to realize that Colbert has been turning sarcasm into a weapon since long before half of Trump's inner circle learned how to pretend they were not panicking on camera. So when Trump stumbled into the arena, convinced he could clown a man whose entire career is professionally clowning political clowns, the result was exactly what you would expect. He did not land the hit. He became the highlight reel. He walked straight into the joke, stood in the middle of it, and somehow managed to humiliate himself at national volume, which, to be fair, has always been one of his most consistent talents. All this heat may be affecting the president, and I want to be sensitive about this. His skin seems to be falling off. Trump was speaking on the White House lawn earlier this week, and see if you can pinpoint the moment the cameraman got a little distracted. At the end of 50 days, if we don't have a deal, it's going to be too bad. I'm going to get more aggressive. Yeah, the tariffs are going to go on and other sanctions go on. Holy Sephora sample counter. Let's be real. The visual of it alone tells a story that words can barely capture. The melting facade of authority, the literal and metaphorical dripping away of the carefully constructed image. Under the harsh, unyielding light of reality and the high-definition lenses of modern television, the makeup cracks, the illusion shatters. The fierce, terrifying leader of the free world suddenly looks like a wax figure left too close to a radiator. Trump going after Colbert is like an uncooked turkey challenging Gordon Ramsay to a roast battle. One of them has timing, skill, and sharp instincts. The other is just stuffed with noise and somehow still convinced he is the main course. And the only thing Trump has truly roasted with any success is public trust, basic decency, and possibly the structural integrity of his own airline. The man keeps stepping into these media fights as if volume equals victory. But against someone like Colbert, volume just makes the embarrassment easier for everyone to hear. And yet the crowd at the rallies keeps cheering. Why? Because the performance is designed for people who mistake confidence for competence. If you say it loud enough, if you say it with enough theatrical hand gestures, a certain segment of the population will believe the sky is falling or that 250,000 people are standing in a space built for 5,000. Certain showmanship, which is surprising because we heard it had tanks and stuff, but in reality, this is what you got. Of course, the White House claims that 25,000 people attended. So now apparently 250,000 people looks like this. They must be really good at hiding behind the trees, or perhaps they were microscopic. Perhaps the administration has developed a brand new technology to shrink supporters down to the size of dust motes just so they can fit into the empty spaces of the National Mall. The Midnight Watcher stepped onto that stage, Colbert probably wearing a suit that actually fit and did not look like it was rescued from a clearance rack in a forgotten 1990s banquet hall, and he let the whole thing fly. He did not simply clap back. He built an entire orchestra of shade and conducted it with a kind of control you only get from someone who has read the Constitution and did not mistake it for a placemat. Trump's latest tantrum was not some tiny spark. It was a full emotional fireplace collapse, the kind of meltdown that makes normal outrage look like cold soup. Here was Trump furious about late night comedians while also acting like he definitely was not watching them at 2:00 a.m. with the intensity of a divorced man checking his ex-wife's vacation photos. And that is the funniest part. Trump's whole public image already feels like a late night parody of a president that escaped the writer's room and somehow found its way into the Situation Room. The difference is simple. Colbert's version has punchlines. Trump's version became the punchline. That is not even political analysis anymore. That is just reality pausing to laugh at itself. And when Trump keeps insisting he won things by impossible margins, Colbert knows exactly what to do with that. Logic was never Trump's strongest muscle. Denial was. And lately, even that suit is starting to look worn out at the seams. This settlement is for a nuisance lawsuit Trump filed, claiming that 60 Minutes deceptively edited their interview with then candidate Kamala Harris last fall. Paramount knows they could have easily fought it because, in their own words, the lawsuit was completely without merit. And keep in mind, Paramount produced Transformers: Rise of the Beasts. They know completely without merit. They are absolute global experts in greenlighting projects that lack any structural, intellectual, or artistic substance. If anyone can spot a multi-million-dollar waste of time from a mile away, it's the executives who thought we needed another film about giant mechanical gorillas fighting alien cars. But the corporate math always wins out. Why spend $30 million on high-priced Manhattan lawyers to prove a point about journalistic integrity when you can simply hand over $16 million from the petty cash drawer and make the problem vanish? It's a cynical calculation. It's the price of doing business in a world where the legal system can be weaponized by anyone with a trust fund and a Twitter account. Frozen golf courses and missing files. Cannot forget the Greenland situation, because somehow Trump once floated the idea of buying Greenland like someone had whispered that it had tremendous real estate potential. You just know he looked at it and saw a frozen golf resort with branding opportunities, Trump Tower nuke, a glittering gold skyscraper rising out of the permafrost, surrounded by melting glaciers and confused polar bears. Colbert could mine that story for 10 years and still have enough material left for a reunion special. While Trump is out here throwing paper towel rolls of rage at anyone who criticizes him, Colbert is calmly slicing through the absurdity with the focus of a surgeon and the theatrical flair of a Broadway star who came prepared for revenge. Trump struggles with satire because satire demands at least a tiny drop of self-awareness. It asks a person to understand that maybe being president is not the same thing as being the loudest man in the room with a bad tie in a personal war against windmills. Colbert lives for those contradictions. Every Trump gaffe becomes comedy fuel. Every wild claim becomes a monologue. Every tantrum becomes another ratings gift. And Trump hates that because jokes are not assets he can bankrupt, no matter how many contractors he has allegedly left unpaid along the way. You cannot file for Chapter 11 protection on a devastating punchline. You cannot stiff a late-night host on the bill for making you look like an absolute buffoon on national television. There's a tenuous ceasefire between Iran and Israel. What happened was around 6 o'clock p.m. Last night, Donald Trump dropped this post. Congratulations to everyone. It has been fully agreed by and between Israel and Iran that there will be a complete and total ceasefire officially. Iran will start the ceasefire, and upon the 12th hour, Israel will start the ceasefire. As if international diplomacy works like a dynamic duo scheduling a conference call on Zoom. As if centuries of deep-seated sectarian conflict, regional proxy warfare, and nuclear ambition could be resolved because a man in Florida typed officially into his smartphone while eating a well-done steak with ketchup. Colbert did not just answer him. He took him apart, one raised eyebrow at a time, one punchline at a time, one perfectly timed pause at a time. He turned Trump into a walking meme of regret. And honestly, watching Trump try to match Colbert in a battle of wit is like watching a goose try to win an argument by honking louder. There are feathers everywhere, plenty of noise, and absolutely no plan. But the best part is that Trump always walks into the trap himself. He thinks comedy works like a political rally where you shout hard enough and eventually someone cheers. Colbert does not need that. He does not have to whip the room into a frenzy. He just lifts an eyebrow, drops one clean line, and suddenly Trump is blinking like someone just explained that Puerto Rico is part of the United States. And the louder Trump growls, the sharper Colbert gets. He is not just pointing out that the emperor has no clothes. He is producing a full fashion show dedicated to the spray tan, the hairpiece, and the spelling errors. Trump once tried to ban TikTok, but his entire brand often looks like a viral parody of competence. Colbert has made it his weekly hobby to broadcast that parody in high definition to millions of people who are all quietly asking the same thing. Is this real life, or did a reality TV blooper reel take over the country with no off switch? No, he's right. The Epstein saga is a total snooze fest. I mean, the most powerful man in the world is blocking information about a cabal of the rich, the famous, and the royal, befriending a con man who regularly flies off in his private plane to his private island to do super illegal sex stuff. Then the con man is arrested. People are afraid he's going to name names, but before he can, he mysteriously dies right after being taken off a suicide watch in a federal prison during the administration of the guy who is blocking the release of the information. Boom. The crowd didn't even know how to react to that one. The tension in the studio was thick enough to cut with a knife because beneath the jokes, beneath the laughter, lies a dark, uncomfortable truth that everyone knows but nobody wants to say out loud. It's the point where comedy stops being a shield and starts being a mirror, the thin orange line. Every time Trump lashes out, it is like pouring lighter fluid straight onto Colbert's fire. You can almost imagine the CBS producers celebrating whenever Trump posts another furious complaint about unfair late-night losers, because when a man who once publicly floated the idea of disinfectant-related medical nonsense calls you dangerous, you know you have probably hit the target. Trump tries to look unbothered, but his skin is thinner than ice at a climate summit. He cannot handle comedians. He cannot handle criticism. And he definitely cannot handle becoming the center of a joke that does not come with applause from a loyal crowd. Meanwhile, Colbert stands on stage calmly pointing out that the emperor is not only exposed, he is also yelling at a lamppost about voter fraud. If that does not deserve an Emmy, what does? Remember Trump's forest fire theory about raking? That was apparently the plan, as if the planet's lungs could be managed with a leaf blower and confidence. Just go out there into the deep Californian wilderness with a plastic rake from Home Depot and tidy up the pine needles. Problem solved. Climate change defeated by landscaping. Trump is obsessed with image. Colbert is obsessed with cutting through the nonsense. One covers facts with fake shine and fog machines. The other peels away the layers like an onion made entirely of absurdity, making people laugh so hard they almost forget this man once had access to nuclear codes. Almost. And that is exactly why it drives Trump crazy. For years before he was reelected, and recently since they all got into office, a bunch of high-ranking people in Trump's administration have kept promising to release the files surrounding Jeffrey Epstein, his mysterious clients, and his suspicious death. But now, suddenly, for reasons that I legally cannot think of, Donald Trump seems desperate to stop us from knowing who Jeffrey Epstein's clients were. The silence that follows a line like that is louder than any laughter. It's the sound of an open loop that may never be closed, a mystery protected by the highest walls of power. And every time the topic is raised, the subject quickly changes. The focus shifts back to the late night hosts, back to the ratings, back to the safe, predictable theater of the culture war. But you cannot silence comedians because jokes move faster than lawsuits. He cannot outtalk Colbert because that would require reading something longer than a restaurant menu. He cannot even distract from the roast by bragging about crowd size because Colbert's punchlines travel further than half of Trump's very legal and very cool press moments. And the best part is that Colbert does not even have to stretch the truth. He simply places the absurdity in the right light and lets the audience connect the dots. It is like watching people slowly realize their self-proclaimed business genius once tried to solve a hurricane problem with a Sharpie and pure imagination. Just draw a little loop around Alabama, and suddenly the weather patterns of the Atlantic Ocean must obey the laws of marketing. At this stage, Colbert roasts Trump with such accuracy that you would think he majored in political satire and minored in presidential clown studies. And honestly, the material never runs out. Trump's social media platform has struggled. His legal problems have stacked up like expired steaks in a Mar-a-Lago freezer. Yet he keeps charging forward like a malfunctioning vacuum cleaner trying to fight its own reflection. Colbert just sits back with the popcorn ready, the monologue loaded, and turns every Trump misfire into comedy wreckage. Trump wants control, Colbert wants comedy, and Trump's idea of a comeback is usually a statement that reads like a ransom note written by someone who has not slept since 2016. All capital letters, broken syntax, and a desperate plea for the world to stop laughing at him. Colbert's response, on the other hand, is 5 minutes of sharp satire delivered with a grin so confident it could probably power a small electric car. Unlike the payoffs from ABC and Twitter, the Paramount settlement did not include an apology. Instead, the corporation released a statement where they said, "You may take our money, but you will never take our dignity. You may, however, purchase our dignity for the low, low price of $16 million. We need the cash." The king of the sandbox. The truth is, this has never been a fair fight. It is a public destruction of dignity, logic, and possibly several hair gel budgets. Trump can yell about low ratings, unfair jokes, and nasty comedians all he wants, but Colbert has already won the matchup. Not by being louder, but by being sharper. Not by throwing rage around, but by turning rage into ridicule. Not with threats, but with roasts. And Trump, with that overcooked ego of his, keeps coming back for more like a moth flying straight into a stage light or a con man wandering toward a courtroom. Every time he attacks Colbert, he hands him new material, new ammunition, and another reason for viewers to grab snacks and tune in. So, if Trump truly believed he could outmatch a man whose job is making America laugh at political madness, he should probably return to the things he knows best: losing legal fights, dodging serious questions, and confusing satire with fake news. Because in a war of words, Colbert is not just playing chess, he is playing four-dimensional sarcasm under studio lights, while Trump is still trying to remember how the horse-shaped piece moves. At this point, Trump challenging Colbert feels like a flamingo challenging a wood chipper. It is strange, colorful, and it ends with feathers everywhere. The man who once stared at a solar eclipse without proper caution apparently thought he could outsmart a walking Harvard degree with a microphone. Trump's rebuttals sound like expired fortune cookies being read by a broken toy, while Colbert's comebacks land with the elegance of a Shakespeare insult wrapped inside a roast beef sandwich. Last week, Trump's press secretary said this: "I have a message directly from the president, and I quote, based on the fact that there's a substantial chance of negotiations that may or may not take place with Iran in the near future, I will make my decision whether or not to go within the next 2 weeks. That would have been perfect for me because we would have been on vacation next week and I wouldn't have known any of this was happening. Now I'm going to have to cancel my reservation at Sandals Fordo. And every time Trump complains about those nasty late night guys, Colbert's ratings seem to get another little burst, like Mar-a-Lago's thermostat during a climate change denial convention. It is honestly a gift. Trump may be the only person who can lose a fight he started against a man armed with nothing more than a tie clip, a desk, and a vocabulary. Meanwhile, Colbert's desk might as well be a throne, and his monologue might as well be a royal order of comedic destruction. Trump could spend the next 5 years posting from whatever social media bunker he has chosen for the week, and Colbert would still turn every typo, every tantrum, and every tantrum about a typo into pure gold. This is not David versus Goliath. This is Goliath accidentally smacking himself in the face with his own club, while Colbert stands nearby narrating the disaster in perfect rhythm. Because at the end of the day, the crown doesn't belong to the man who owns the network, or the man who signs the settlements, or even the man who commands the military. In the arena of public opinion, the crown always belongs to the person who gets the last laugh. And as the studio lights dim and the applause swells, it's clear that Donald Trump isn't just losing the battle for late night. He's completely forgotten how to tell the joke.